Malik's sneakers were falling apart. The soles flapped slightly with every step he took, the right one more than the left, giving him an uneven rhythm that echoed across the cracked sidewalks of Milwaukee. He kept his head down, hands deep in the pockets of his hoodie, his breath forming small clouds in the brisk spring air. It wasn't cold enough for gloves, but just enough to sting the skin, the kind of air that reminded you summer wasn't quite here. Slung over his shoulder was a basketball that had seen better days. The leather worn to a smooth shine, grip long gone. Still, he cradled it like treasure. The same way he cradled the shirt he wore underneath his hoodie, a faded Milwaukee Bucks jersey with the number 34 on the back, the letters barely readable. It used to be forest green. Now it was closer to olive, with threads unraveling at the seams and a hole forming near the collar. It had belonged to his father. Every Saturday morning, Malik made his way to the Oak Ridge courts, 4 outdoor courts surrounded by a rusty chain-link fence and cracked asphalt that hosted the most competitive pickup games on the north side. It was a rite of passage for the kids in the neighborhood. If you could hold your own at Oak Ridge, people noticed, and Malik needed people to notice. He wasn't tall, not yet, but he had the fire. Quick hands, sharp instincts, and that kind of explosive first step that left defenders stumbling. He wasn't flashy. He didn't talk much. But he played with a hunger that made coaches look twice and made other players uncomfortable. Malik didn't play to show off. He played like he was trying to prove something, because he was. He lived with his grandmother in a small 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. His mom wasn't around. His father had passed when Malik was 5. Car accident. The jersey, the one that clung to Malik's skinny frame like armor, was all he had left of him. It still smelled faintly like the cedar his dad used to keep in the closet. When Malik wore it, he felt different, bigger, stronger, like he was playing for 2. He arrived at the courts just as the morning games were heating up. Music blasted from a speaker someone had bungee corded to the fence. The smell of bacon and grease wafted in from a corner vendor with a makeshift grill. Kids called out for next game, and the air buzzed with trash talk and sneaker squeaks. Malik nodded at a few familiar faces. Most didn't nod back. He stood by the chain link, scanning the games, waiting. He wasn't on the list, the unofficial rotation the older boys kept. You had to be invited in or prove yourself in smaller games. Malik had done both. Still, they rarely gave him a chance. Today, though, one of the regulars was late. There was a spot open. Dre, the de facto king of Oak Ridge, leaned on the fence with a water bottle in hand. He was tall, already growing facial hair, and wore brand new Jordans with matching Nike compression gear under a Bucks swingman jersey. Everything about him said money, swagger, status. Malik approached. Dre looked at him and raised an eyebrow. "You here for next?" Malik nodded. "Yeah." Dre shrugged. "All right. You got it." That was all it took. Malik's heart surged. He took off his hoodie, revealing the tattered Giannis jersey underneath. The air touched his skin, cool and sharp. He bounced the ball once, trying to calm the nerves. The game started fast, 3-on-3, first to 15, straight 1s and 2s. Malik's team got the ball first. He passed it off quickly, not wanting to overstep, but on the second possession, he found himself with space at the top of the key. Dre clapped from the corner. "Let's see it, little man." Malik took the shot. Clean arc, swish. The net barely moved, but Dre didn't cheer. He walked over, brow furrowed. "Yo, timeout," he said, holding his hands up. The game paused. Dre stepped in front of Malik and looked him up and down. His lip curled. "What's that?" he asked, pointing to the jersey. Malik looked down, confused. It's Giannis, my dad's old one." Dre smirked. "Yeah, I can see that. Old as hell. That thing's like prehistoric. Holes and everything." A few of the other kids chuckled. Malik's face flushed. "Are you trying to rep the Bucks or represent goodwill?" Dre added, loud enough for everyone to hear. The laughter grew. Malik didn't say anything. He couldn't. His mouth was dry, his fists clenched. Dre shook his head. "Nah, not today. Not looking like that." He turned to the rest. "We got standards here, bro. Can't have someone out here making us look like we play in the Stone Age." Malik stared at him, disbelief and anger simmering. But Dre just walked back to his side, gesturing to a kid on the sideline. "Yo, Tone, jump in, Malik's out." The new kid ran in, eager. Malik didn't move. He stood frozen at half court until someone gently bounced a ball toward him, the unspoken signal to clear the way. He picked it up and walked off the court, each step heavier than the last. He sat on the cold concrete edge by the fence, the ball resting beside him, the sounds of the game echoing like distant thunder. His hands gripped his knees. He didn't cry, not in front of them, but his throat ached. He thought of his father, the jersey, the memories of games watched together on a tiny living room TV. He thought of how proud his dad had been when Giannis was drafted. "That kid's got the heart," his father had said. "Not just Hop's heart, that's what matters." And now that jersey was the reason he was being laughed at. He stared at the game but didn't see it. The world blurred at the edges. He didn't even notice the black SUV that pulled up across the street, or the tall figure who stepped out wearing a plain hoodie and sweats, face partly hidden under a cap. The man walked slowly, surveying the scene, unnoticed at first. His steps were calm, deliberate. He moved like someone who belonged anywhere he went. Malik sniffed, wiped his nose on his sleeve, and turned his gaze downward. A basketball rolled his way, a wild pass gone rogue. It bumped gently against his foot. Without thinking, Malik reached down and picked it up. He stood and, from where he sat, launched it back with a perfect bounce pass. It hit the player in the chest, crisp and direct. A few kids turned. One of them raised an eyebrow. The man who had been watching nodded to himself. He walked toward the bench where Malik sat and took a seat beside him, stretching out his long legs. For a moment, neither of them said anything. "Nice pass," the man said finally. Malik shrugged. "Do I play much?" "Every day." The man looked at him, his voice lower. "Better than them?" Malik hesitated. "Yeah, but it doesn't matter." "Oh, not when you wear the wrong thing." The man chuckled, low and knowing. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Can I see it?" he asked. Malik looked confused. "The jersey," the man said. Malik slowly unzipped his hoodie, the faded green fabric, the barely visible 34. The man nodded solemnly. "That's real. That's not a shirt. That's a story." Malik looked up, something flickering in his eyes. Recognition. The man smiled. "Yeah," he said. "That's me." Malik couldn't move. For a few seconds, he just stared at the man beside him, his brain scrambling to confirm what his eyes were telling him. The voice, the height, the build, and now that smile. It wasn't just someone who looked like Giannis. It was him. Giannis Antetokounmpo. Sitting next to him on a splintered bench by a half-broken court on the north side of Milwaukee, like this was the most normal place to be on a Saturday afternoon. Giannis leaned back a little, hands resting on his knees. His eyes scanned the court casually, but he wasn't really watching the game. He was watching Malik's reaction. "You okay, kid?" Malik opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came out. He closed it, swallowed, then nodded slowly. Giannis smiled wider. "What's your name?" Malik." "Malik," he repeated. "Good name. Strong." He nodded toward the court. "So what happened out there?" Malik hesitated. "They said I couldn't play because of my jersey." Giannis looked down at the faded green shirt again. "Because of this?" Malik nodded. "They said it's too old. Looks poor." Giannis raised an eyebrow. "Looks like history to me." That made Malik blink. He looked down at the jersey again, uncertain. Giannis leaned closer. "Let me tell you something. When I first came here from Greece, I had one pair of shoes, just one. My brother and I used to share them. I would play a quarter, then switch. That's what we had." Malik's eyes widened. He'd heard stories, sure. Giannis selling sunglasses on the street, walking to games, sending his whole salary back to his family. But hearing it like this, from his own mouth, made it real in a way it never had been. Giannis tapped Malik's chest gently, right over the jersey. This isn't old. This is loyalty. That's love right there. Anybody who can't see that doesn't deserve to be on the court with you." They sat in silence for a moment. Malik felt a heat rising in his chest. Not embarrassment this time, but something closer to pride. Like his shirt wasn't something to hide, but something to hold higher. Giannis stood up and stretched. "You still want to play?" Malik looked at him, confused. "Here?" "Yeah, here." He gestured to the court. "With me." Malik's breath caught in his throat. "You're gonna play?" Giannis grinned. "I didn't come all the way out here just to watch." Then, louder, so everyone could hear, "Yo, who's got next?" The court fell silent. Heads turned. Someone dropped their phone. Wait, bro, is that Giannis?" Panic swept across the court like a wave. Dre, who was in the middle of checking the ball, froze with his hands in the air. His teammates looked from him to the bench, to the towering figure now walking toward them. Giannis stepped onto the court like he belonged there, because he did. Every eye followed him. Phones came out, photos were being taken. A small crowd began to form around the chain-link fence. Giannis stopped at half-court and looked around. "I need one," he said, raising a finger. No one moved, not at first. He turned toward the bench. "Malik," he called, "let's go." Malik's legs felt like rubber as he stood. He picked up his ball and started walking. With every step toward the court, the world seemed to tilt slightly. The same people who had ignored him just minutes ago were now staring at him, not with mockery this time, but with awe, confusion, and a little bit of fear. Dre stepped forward, still trying to piece it all together. "Wait," he said, holding a hand up. "Yo, no offense, but he's not on the list." Giannis tilted his head. "He's on my list." The crowd laughed nervously. Dre forced a chuckle. Come on, look at his..." Giannis stepped closer. His smile was gone. His voice dropped into something colder. "Let me ask you something," he said. "You ever play for your life? You ever lace up busted shoes and walk 5 miles just to get one shot at a game?" Dre didn't answer. Giannis nodded toward Malik. "This kid, he's out here every day, playing like it matters. You know what that shirt means?" He tapped his chest again, mimicking the earlier motion. "That shirt means heart. That shirt means why. You want to judge him for that? Then maybe you don't love this game like you think you do." Silence. The kind that falls when the air itself doesn't want to interrupt. Finally, Dre stepped back. Hands up. "Aight, he can run." Giannis clapped once. "Let's go." Malik stepped onto the court, the old jersey clinging to his chest like a second skin. Giannis bumped fists with him. "You got this." The game started. At first, Malik played tight. His hands trembled. His feet didn't want to move the way they normally did. How could they? He was playing next to Giannis. MVP, champion, legend. But Giannis didn't take over. He didn't dominate. He let Malik lead. "Run point," he said. "You call it." Malik nodded. The ball was inbounded to him. He dribbled slowly up the court. The same kids who had mocked him now pressed him cautiously, as if they weren't sure what kind of player he was anymore. He passed to Giannis, then cut. Giannis hit him back with a no-look bounce pass. Malik drove, pulled up, clean jumper, splash. The crowd roared. Next play. Malik stole the inbound, wrapped behind his back to avoid a reach, hit a step back from the corner. The bench exploded. Kids were now chanting his name. "Malik! Malik! Malik!" Giannis grinned, watching the boy move with a growing confidence. "There he is," he murmured. By the midpoint of the game, it wasn't even close. Malik had scored 6 of their 9 points. Every time he made a shot, it felt like erasing every insult that had ever been hurled at his shirt. Every bucket was a rewriting of history. Then came the final play. Game point. Malik dribbled at the top of the key, guarded tightly by Dre. He feinted left, crossed over hard, spun, and dished it to Giannis on the baseline. Giannis rose like a rocket and hammered down a dunk that rattled the backboard. The crowd went wild. The game was over. Giannis walked to half court and pointed to Malik. "That's your MVP right there." Malik stood frozen, overwhelmed. Then Giannis raised his arm high in the air. The fence overflowed with cheers, applause, camera flashes. Dre walked over. His face was flushed. He held out a hand. I was wrong, man. You got game. That was real." Malik looked at him, then shook his hand, not out of spite, but because it was the right thing to do. Giannis walked over, pulled something from a duffel bag he'd left by the bench, a brand new Bucks jersey and a fresh, clean, untouched. He held it out to Malik. "This one's official," he said, "but never take that one off," he added, nodding to the old shirt. "That one's your story." Malik held both jerseys in his hands. The new one glimmered in the light, but the old one was alive. Giannis turned to the crowd. "You don't win championships with clothes," he said. "You win with soul, with family, with sacrifice. Don't forget that." Then he patted Malik's shoulder, whispered something only the boy could hear, and walked off the court. The crowd slowly dispersed, buzzing with what they'd just seen. Malik stood in the middle of the court, the ball in his hands, the old jersey still clinging to his chest. He didn't need to say anything. He'd already said it all on the court. The court had never felt so quiet. Even with the fading buzz of the crowd dispersing behind him, even with phones still snapping photos and videos, as people drifted away into the late afternoon, Malik stood in a bubble of stillness. The ball rested against his hip, one hand gripping the side, the other still clutching the new jersey Giannis had handed him. It was fresh, crisp. Number 34. Shiny white with green trim. Not a thread out of place, but Malik's eyes kept going back to the old one. The fabric that clung to him like it was stitched not just with thread, but with memory. It smelled like the past. It was the past. It was his father's arms around him while watching the Bucks get blown out by 40, his grandma laughing in the kitchen when his dad shouted at the TV, the way his dad always said, "You don't need to be flashy. You just need to show up and play hard. That's enough." Today it was enough. Today it had been everything. He walked off the court slowly. The other kids parted without being told, giving him space like they would a real pro, like someone who'd earned it. "Yo, Malik," someone said. "That was fire, man. Kid's legit. I saw him dunk once last year, told you all he was serious." He didn't react much to any of it. His face was calm, focused. His mind was a storm, but his body moved with a kind of calm he hadn't felt before. Not just because he had played with Giannis, but because for the first time he had been seen, truly, for what he was, not for what he wore, not for what he lacked. At the edge of the court, he saw Dre leaning on the fence, arms crossed. Malik nodded at him as he passed. Dre nodded back. No words. None were needed. Respect had been earned, the only way that mattered here, not through talk, but through the game. Malik walked the long block home with the new jersey folded in his hands and the old one still hugging his chest. The setting sun stretched long shadows across the sidewalk. Cars rolled by slowly, a few drivers honking and pointing. Word had already started spreading through the neighborhood. Giannis came to Oak Ridge. Some kid played with him. The kid in the old shirt. At home, his grandma was waiting on the porch, her eyes squinting in the light. "You late," she said, but not unkindly. Had me worried. "I was playing," he said. "Playing with the whole city from what I've been seeing on this phone," she said, waving it at him. "Lord Malik, you know you're all over the internet right now." He shrugged, but couldn't help the small smile forming on his lips. "You met Giannis?" she asked. "I played with him," he said quietly. She stood, hands on hips. "Played with him?" "Yeah. On the court. 3-on-3. I hit 6 shots." She walked down the steps and pulled him into a hug before he could finish. "I knew it," she whispered into his shoulder. "Your daddy would have loved this." He nodded against her. That night, Malik didn't sleep. He tried, but the images kept coming back. The look Giannis gave him when he passed the ball, the explosion of cheers, the way the jersey in his hands had felt heavier than any trophy. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Then he sat up and turned on the small desk lamp by the window. He grabbed a marker from his backpack, the permanent kind, and carefully wrote on the inside collar of the new jersey, "Never forget who you are. G." Then, just below it, he added his own name. The next few days changed everything. When he showed up at school on Monday, everyone knew, teachers, security guards, the principal. The whole cafeteria seemed to tilt toward him when he walked in. "Yo, Malik, that was you. Bro, saw you and Giannis on TikTok, that crossover. ESPN posted it, dog." He nodded, shy but grateful. He didn't puff his chest, didn't strut. He just smiled and sat down. That was enough. A week later, the Bucks invited him to a home game, courtside seats. Giannis greeted him again before warm-ups, gave him a signed ball, posed for photos, and told reporters, "This kid reminded me what the game's about." They played the video on the Jumbotron at halftime. Malik shaking Dre with a cross, Giannis feeding him the assist, Malik nailing the jumper. The crowd cheered. The camera found him in the front row. He waved once, then sat back down. The next morning, Malik woke up to over 200 DMs from local reporters, scout accounts, and people asking for interviews. He ignored most of them. What mattered to him was back at Oak Ridge. He started showing up every Saturday again, still wearing the same old jersey. Not because he had nothing else. Now he had bags of new gear, boxes of shoes gifted by brands hoping to sponsor him. But because it grounded him. It reminded him what had brought him here. And now when he stepped onto the court, people listened. Not just watched, listened. He started teaching younger kids, calling plays, setting up drills. Dre joined him. The others followed. The court changed. It used to be a place of ego, of showing off. Now it became something else. Kids started bringing in others who'd been pushed aside. Shy kids, quiet kids, broke kids. Nobody laughed at old gear anymore. In fact, some started showing up in their dad's old jerseys on purpose, like a tribute. Malik never asked for that. But he didn't stop it either. One day a new kid came to the court, maybe 10. Skinny, nervous. He wore a massive t-shirt that hung down to his knees and shoes at least 2 sizes too big. He hovered near the fence, clutching a ball but not saying a word. Malik noticed. He jogged over and squatted in front of him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Trey," the kid mumbled. "You play?" Trey nodded. "Come on," Malik said. "You're running with me." Trey's eyes widened. "But I'm not good. And my shoes—" Malik smiled. "I don't care about your shoes." The game started. Trey touched the ball 3 times, scored once, missed once, got knocked down once. But Malik helped him up, patted his back, told him, "That's how you learn." Later, as the sun started to drop behind the trees and the court began to empty, Malik sat on the same bench where he had met Giannis. He looked down at the court, cracked, faded, and still full of magic. He closed his eyes and listened. The echo of the ball bouncing, the sneakers sliding, the voices rising and falling. He thought of his dad, of that awful moment when Dre had kicked him off the court, of the pass he'd made from the bench, of the man who sat beside him and saw what no one else did. And then Malik smiled to himself. One day, he would be the one to change everything for someone else, not because of fame, not because of talent, because he remembered, because he had worn the old shirt too. And it had never, not once, stopped him.